Hi, I'm Doug Keck, and welcome once again to EWTN's Bookmark. Our special guest author, retired Bishop Robert J. Baker, retired from Birmingham. His book, Prayers of Desperation, a questioner's prayer for answers in our darkest moments, proudly published by EWTN Publishing and naturally available through the EWTN Religious Catalog for all things Catholic, EWTNRC.com. It's great to see you again, my friend.
Good to be back again.
You know, you served on the board of EWTN for a number of years when you were here. You're retired now, but you're still pretty busy, aren't you? What are you doing?
Well, parish missions occasionally. I just had a wedding recently and renewal of marriage vows, and I live out near Camp Tekakwitha, the diocesan camp, so I help there quite a bit too with retreats and whatever. So and fill in for Bishop Reka, and we'll be doing so shortly. So.
Okay, great. Well, it's interesting because I know in your book you talked about how much doing confirmations was important to you. Do you still get to do those these days?
I do. You know, I fill in for him too at times with confirmations, and it's something very dear to my heart. Right. It's a very important opportunity to connect with youth.
Right.
And that's always a challenge to have the right words at the right time for them.
Absolutely. Now this book, Prayers of Desperation, A Questioner's Prayer for Answers in Our Darkest Moments, it's based basically on an earlier work of yours back in, what, 06 or so?
That's correct.
That we actually talked about. Yeah. And it's out again, and it seems to be even more prescient today than it was when you first put it out.
I think so. Prayers of Desperation, A Questioner's Prayer for Answers in Our Darkest Moments. It was originally under the title The Questioner's Prayer, and thanks to EWTN, it's getting an extended life, and I'm grateful for that fact because I think people need this book. A lot of people are struggling, even difficult times of the year, Christmas time, people have struggles. I recently got a call with a family whose son overdosed Christmas Eve, and involved with their funeral. So those difficult times that come in everybody's life, nobody can escape it. How do we deal with them?
Right.
And my point of the book basically is it doesn't hurt to ask a question of God when those times come up. Where are you, God? How am I going to get out of this situation? What am I going to do? Where are you in my desperate situation? Now, the word desperation, we have to be careful. It comes from the word despair, desperare, which means despair. And the book is not about despairing. It's actually about faith. But that's the best word we could come up with.
Because listen, we're Catholics. We love St. Jude. We go to him right away, right? So
that's
I mean,
right.
A lot of lost causes there. So
what do we do when we're in those situations? We hang on with faith. It's what we do.
Absolutely. You know, it's interesting too because you put in the beginning of the book, there's two quotes, and the ultimate question is always a question about God and the meaning of life. That's Saint Pope John Paul II, and then obviously recently we lost Pope Benedict at the very beginning of the year, and he used the quote here from Birkenau, where he said, "Why, Lord, did you remain silent? How could you tolerate all of this?" And of course, this is in the context
Benedict.
Benedict of
the Holocaust.
Holocaust. Now, with that being but that is a lot of the questions people had coming out of World War I, World War II, during the Holocaust itself, where people did lose their faith because they felt like, why is God so quiet? Why isn't he answering our prayers?
Pope Emeritus Benedict lived through that difficult time and raised the right question. I've been in Birkenau. I've seen that situation, Auschwitz as well, Dachau, and you know, you raise questions coming out of that situation. How do you maintain your faith in the midst of such a terrible outcome of the killing of millions of Jews and millions of Christians in those camps? And that's his dilemma, but our answer is faith.
Right. Now, the way you lay it out here in the 6 chapters, it's kind of like taking a course in how to cover a story. You know, the why, how, when, what, where, and who.
Yeah.
How'd you decide to use that format?
Well, I took a course in writing at one time, and the professor said when you're writing a story, you have those questions. Quis, quid ubi, quibus auxiliis, cur, quomodo, quando in Latin. So you throw all those out, as you're writing a story. Well, that's in there.
Right.
You know, those are the questions though that come out of people when they're struggling.
Right.
And as you know, I've worked with drug addicts on
Right.
this side.
Chinookalo, right?
Chinookalo community of Mother Elvira for
Yeah. Who was here on the network many years
she's
ago,
been
right?
with you,
Yeah, right, yeah.
25 years ago. I met her, and they're celebrating this year their 40th anniversary in Saluzzo. Our Pope Francis is very close to that community. He welcomed them as Cardinal in Buenos Aires to Argentina, and he visited their community in Rome recently. Just coming shortly is their opening of a house near Assisi, Italy, which I've been promoting, that hopefully our American community members can be there sometime to experience the story of Francis. So that dilemma that faces a lot of families, a lot of Catholic families as well. How do I deal with a drug addicted husband, wife, son or daughter, grandson or granddaughter?
Well, you say here in the preface, preoccupation of everyday life distracts us, you know, and some of these distractions are about problems that we're facing. Some go much deeper, like you said, to the questions that people have buried within themselves and never quite come to the surface, questions that deal with serious issues they're facing in their relationship with God ultimately. You say, my intention in this book is to help people bring questions to God in prayer. And then you mentioned as well the Blessed Mother. How do you see that duo there?
Well, we need to surface our problems. As psychologists get us to bring them up with them and pay out good money to them rightfully. So with God, he wants us to surface what is really getting at our prayer life. And oftentimes it's a deep-seated issue that we really don't want to talk about. And I just suggest that we do bring those problems to him. In the case of Mary, how is this possible? I do not know, man. She's surfacing.
That's, you have her in one of the chapters basically under that how.
That how question.
Right.
You know, that question was, Zechariah was also posing that question. And there's two different ways of posing it. One is the way of faith, and one is their way of disbelief. And in Zechariah's case, he just says, no way, this ain't going to happen. And Mary's how was she believed God had a way. She just didn't know how she could make that possible.
Right.
And she knew all things are possible with God, so somehow God was going to make it possible. And she knew that deep within her, in her faith.
Right, exactly. And you should talk about in the book here, the apostles questioned.
Yeah.
You know, it's not, I think some people feel like it's a lack of faith, or I don't have enough trust if I question.
You know, I often wonder whether Jesus used what's called the Socratic method, a question-answer. Thomas Aquinas uses it, and that he allowed his apostles to ask him questions, and he asked them too.
Now you say here, turning to God in a time of quandary and distress is itself a great act of faith. While we struggle to understand his will, we nonetheless cry out to him with our questions.
So I just have as a thesis of the book that a question can be a prayer of faith when it's uttered in that way. Now I'm in touch with all kind of people who are on the verge of despair, and I tell them, hold on, share your problem with the Lord, just don't give up. In other words, don't despair, and make your dilemma a prayer. Don't ignore it, and don't deny it. It's a real prayer if you just take it to God, and then listen to him. Allow him to come back to you with an answer.
Well, do you think there's more despair today than there has been in the past, and if so, why?
Well, yes. My answer is yes. Now, I'm 78 years old, a lot older than you, Doug, and
I wish you were substantially older than me.
and I've seen quite a bit.
I hope I look that good if I make it.
I have to say you do. But the reality is, I think compared with when I tell this to confirmands, their age, life was a lot easier. The culture supported our faith back in the 50s and on into the 60s when I was growing up. And my early days in the seminary, they were, you know, it was a different world. I really feel for parents raising children today. I don't have children, obviously, but I connect with a lot of children of other parents whose sons and daughters are addicts, and I know the struggles the parents go through. And today, it's just so widespread. Why is there despair in our culture among youth at early age, kind of giving up?
Right.
There's a reason for it. The culture has changed to being much more secular, hedonistic, narcissistic, and the secular values have taken over.
And do you think part of the problem is the secular values are false? So when people either achieve them or try to achieve them, they realize that they're false.
Well, they're going barking up the wrong tree.
And then they say, well, there isn't anything.
That's correct. And they don't move to the next step.
Right.
Many don't.
Right.
But you know, sometimes that's an opportunity.
Right.
Being in a prison, having a drug problem can be an opportunity.
Well, many people have conversion experience when they hit bottom.
Exactly.
They have that change. I think you have, you know, in here later in the book, where that shrine, where people here was the Marian Shrine, Sorrowful Mother Shrine in Bellevue, Ohio. And I thought it was interesting because you talk about the people who received healings effectively, and you list crutches, stretchers, and then liquor bottles and cigarettes.
Yeah, Sorrowful Mother Shrine.
Yeah.
So it's a shrine to Our Lady. There are people from all over the world go there, and it was in my hometown backyard, the Diocese of Toledo. So yeah, Sorrowful Mother Shrine. It was founded by Father Bruner's community, the Precious Blood Fathers, and my uncle and great uncle belonged to that order. So yes, the answers to the people's struggles.
And the kind of struggles, so you're dealing with physical problems, and then you're dealing with some addictive problems that, you know, have psychological impact as well.
And of course, meeting Mother Elvira, I've learned a lot from her about hope for people with addictions. It's not an easy way out. Her community of Chinaclo was founded to help mainly people with addictions, but her premise is that there is hope, but it's based on God. And the term Chinaclo means the upper room, the Eucharist. Now, we Catholics need to use that resource in helping people that are struggling. I think often our brothers and sisters of Protestant faiths use the resource of the Bible better than we use the resource of the Eucharist in helping people. And I know there are people right now trying to get, like the Calyx people, trying to get the Eucharist as a basis for helping people, and also with the 12-step program to bring the Eucharist into that for Catholics. I think why not bring our resources? We haven't used them well enough, and I learned that from this nun.
Well, you highly recommend in the book the idea, if you're dealing with these issues, to go in front of the Blessed Sacrament, not only access the sacraments, do adoration, and a chance, that's a great time to talk to our Lord, right?
I've seen it with addicts in the Chinaclo program. In fact, Mother Elvira has somebody praying in each community an hour a day. Then on the weekends, they all do it in community together. And that's when the real conversion happens. You know, you can be praying for years, and then the answer comes to you, an insight that you didn't have. Maybe after 5, 10 years, it really hits you. Well, these guys can be praying. Their community is not a quick fix. It's a 3-year community. It goes on after they leave. So Mother Elvira and the Europeans have discovered that it takes time to heal. In our American culture, it's a quick fix. Everything's quick fix. Pill will do it, and that's it. It's a wrong attitude, and the problem came on gradually, and it's going to take a while to heal. And the Eucharist is part of the healing. Right.
We like the short book, 5 Answers to How to Change Your Life. It's got to be quick and something I can read in 10 minutes. In the Prayers of Desperation, you talk about the questioners, you talk about the Gospels, the Gospel way. You said the people in the Gospels who put questions to Jesus hold a special place in Christian dispensation. You say the questioners were not afraid to acknowledge a little of their own ignorance in their quest for meaning and the purpose of life.
Well, that's what I like about St. Peter, you
Right.
know. People often say, well, he had a lot of dumb questions, you know, all these times when the exalted situations, the transfiguration that is built 3/10, you know. And all. But the Lord had an understanding. He didn't know everything about Jesus at that point. It wasn't until really after the resurrection that they began to put it all together, huh?
Right.
And then, you know, it took a while. So he takes us where we are. So that, yeah, they had dumb questions, and he didn't put them off. He accepted them. So that's what the same with these. They might seem like dumb questions. Why do
Right.
you say this if you really believe?
Right.
Well, it's because I believe and I'm hurting that I'm not afraid to bring this to Jesus. That's the point
Right,
of this
and,
book.
and underlying in here throughout the book, you talk humility, the ability to go and say, I don't know, Lord, I need you, Lord, I need you to explain this to me.
Yeah. Well, look at the only apostle that failed was Judas. And he had a terrible thing. He betrayed Jesus. What was he lacking was humility. So pride destroys us. It's the great sin. And the final impenitence, really, it comes down to pride. And that's what happened to Judas. So, yeah, we all do things wrong. We have to be humble enough to take our situation to Jesus, no matter what it is.
Right, you talk about types of prayer, and you had acts, adoration, contrition,
Yes.
thanksgiving, supplication. And you said there's another type of prayer, the prayer of interrogation.
Interrogation or desperation. You can put it in both ways. You know, it might be on the line of supplication. So what we were taught in seminary, the ACTS, adoration, contrition, thanksgiving, supplication. But maybe under supplication is that area of, you know, the questions, interrogation or desperation. And that's a very important element, and that's my point in writing this book.
Now you have some wonderful images that you put in the book, and I know there's some reasoning behind it in your mind and what you wanted to get across. In the section, Why Lord, you talk about the fact that our Lord uttered, in a sense, the why prayer of all time when he himself was on the cross. Right?
Psalm 22, he lifts, my God, why have you forsaken me? Huh? Now, this is coming from Jesus on the cross. How far his Father must have felt in his human condition. And I made a point of having that image of Jesus. We have the crucifixion scene we see most of the time, and they're very beautiful.
Right.
Is that Christ resigned into my hands, I commend my spirit. I accept this. But we also have the agonizing Christ of that, with that prayer, one of his final words. Why have you forsaken me? Psalm 22.
Right, and I know Father Benedict Groeschel always talked about the idea of the crucifix versus the risen Christ image, because his mind was, none of us have been risen yet, but we've all experienced the cross.
That's right.
So it's a much more relatable.
Correct. But there are different depictions of the cross,
Right.
and here I want this one to be used in this book.
Right, and you talk, Christ does not explain in the abstract the reasons for suffering, but before all else he says, follow me, come.
There we go. So it's really hard to put your finger on a solution other than that. Follow me. And, you know, if we follow him, we're going to be on the cross. When I became a bishop, what a beautiful thing, you know, where, you know, and all that accolades. I was ordained a bishop in '99, and 2002 was the breaking point of the scandals.
Right, just in time, right?
Just in time. And so we experienced the crucifixion, excuse me, and any bishop today, being ordained a bishop, is exposed to that if he's truly embracing his time as a bishop.
Right, absolutely. It's interesting because in each chapter you also include prayer, but additional resources. What made you decide to put that?
Well, so I have a bibliography that where people can go, because there's many books written better than mine by great theologians and others. Thomas Aquinas is certainly one that's written much in the area of this area. But so yeah, don't just pick this up, but go to the resources too that I mentioned.
In the chapter you have when, and you have it under when Lord, and then underneath you say here and now. So are you prophesizing something here that this is all happening, that the Lord's coming right away? Or?
No, nobody can do that. When are you coming, Lord, into my life? You know, I've been waiting to see you, and everything's so dark. You know, sometimes the darkest moments are when the Lord is most present. And so our when is basically a recognition that it's now and is in this situation.
Right.
And embracing that situation, as terrible as it is, as desperate as it seems. So right here and right now,
Right.
forget the future. The when is now.
Right. Well, you say here in Matthew's Gospel, Jesus is telling us not to focus so much on the when of the Lord's coming at the end times, but the when of the Lord's coming to us day to day in our midst.
Correct. Exactly. That's the point. And bring it all to the reality of my when is right now, this very moment. And that's the sacrament of the present moment. Beautiful book written on that by a French theologian, priest. We got to embrace the sacramental character of right now.
Right. And Mother obviously was so into the present moment in her
Mother
own.
Angelica.
Absolutely. In
Yeah,
her
and
own.
all her suffering. Of course, I was with her in their last years, and
Right.
how she had to embrace this. And I think, you know, that's our ticket to heaven, is how we embrace our suffering. We'll rid ourselves of a lot of time in purgatory.
Do you think part of the problem with what's going on today and why we're having so many problems is that our culture is in a sense that, well, embracing suffering, that's kind of like masochistic or sadistic, and, you know, the goal is to alleviate suffering.
Right. Mother Elvira taught me well, and she taught her community. She used the word sofferenza all the time, Italian, the word for suffering in Italian. Embrace your suffering, your poverties. Embrace them, and you're going to find God. But yes, we try to escape our suffering, and that's the peril of the Western culture today. We think we can escape. We cannot. Suffering is part of life because of the sin of Adam.
Right. Now, in the What Lord section, you've got questions. What is God calling me to do with my life? What must I do to possess everlasting? What more can I do? What rewards await a person who abandons all to Christ? I remember with the idea that one priest used to say, it's not about the why is this happening. It's what am I supposed to do with this? What do I do with what I have right now?
Yeah, and that's the discernment, the grace of discerning what God wants me to do. You have a beautiful program on Fridays on EWTN, the priest from Florida that does that whole program of discerning God's will.
Right, yeah, Father Gallagher.
Father Gallagher, phenomenal. I listen to him all the time. And I think there's where we need to go. It's the Ignatian way of discerning what God wants for me. And there's a way to determine that. So that you know, there's a way to fish through all that and get the answers. Yes.
Right. Now, one of the things I noticed in the book is that you talked about, I have loved Jesus in the night, that you knew Bishop William Curlin, and a story about Mother Teresa, and so many of us hear about that dark night of the soul, and people say, well, if Mother Teresa can't find Jesus, how am I going to find him?
Yeah, and she did find him, but it was a lot of the last years of her life were what's referred to as the dark night of the soul, which is a high level of spirituality. We have our other nights, but that's a little bit different kind that really holy people have.
Right.
And in Mother's case, Mother Teresa of Calcutta, Saint Teresa, that she says, I found Jesus in the night. Yes.
Right.
And that's what we have to do, you know, in our nights, however they are, whatever level they are of spirituality for us, we need to find Jesus.
Just before we go, there's a prayer that's in the back of the book that you had written that I know you wanted to bring forth.
Well, I wrote that as a seminarian. In the seminary chapel, there was the crucifix that we meditated before every day in the Josephinum Seminary, and under the crucifix was the word consummatum est. So I meditated on it, and I wrote this prayer as the Calvary's prayer, and it takes you through with outstretched hands. I beg of thee, Father, hear my plea. This cross has torn my body, be not far from me, and it goes on in excruciating ways to depict what Jesus might have experienced. And then at the end, of course, are the words, "For heaven is open and mankind saved, consummatum est." So I had, I think, a spiritual insight that was given to me after meditating there all those years in the seminary there. I think it's still applicable today. That was 60 years ago.
Right.
And I still meditate on that.
Okay, well, very good. We appreciate it, Bishop. It's great to see you again.
Always a pleasure. God bless you.
The retired Bishop Robert J. Baker from Birmingham, Prayers of Desperation, is his book, A Questioner's Prayer for Answers in Our Darkest Moments. Boy, do we need them now. Published by EWTN, proudly published, available through our EWTN religious catalog, EWTNRC.com, all things Catholic. I'm Doug Keck. Thank you for stopping by Bookmark. We'll see you next time.